Hello, America. Welcome to Third Party Conversation. I'm Jason.
And I'm TC.
I want to make a couple of clarifications from last week. I made a couple of boo-boos. We were talking about the chronology of some of the corruption that has happened through the years. And I made the statement, we were going from Reagan to Bush to Clinton, and I made the statement, Bush pardons and Clinton. And it sounded like Bush pardons Clinton. That didn't happen. Bush didn't pardon Clinton. Didn't pardon Clinton. H.W. Bush pardoned some folks from Iran-Contra from the Reagan administration. That's what I was trying to say. And then we got on to the Clinton scandals. And then the other thing I said was moving to a multi-party system or having three parties changes the math. And it makes it almost impossible for the president to have the House and the Senate in his pocket. I said, for some reason, I said possible. Mm-hmm. It was ridiculous. But anyway, I don't want
they knew what you meant.
I don't want people to be confused by that. It's almost impossible. Last week, we teased at the end, the media would have you believe that there are saviors, when in fact, there are none. In true third-party fashion, we're going to go back to the roots. Ben Franklin said, without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. Freedom of the press was critical.
Freedom of speech and freedom of the press are commingle.
Yeah, they're kind of adjacent to one another. They're different, but they're adjacent. And the freedom of the press was critical to the framers for our democracy and for our freedom. And the AI overview, you really should get a minute and just Google the framers' thoughts on freedom of the press. And it comes up, the Founding Fathers viewed a free press as a vital safeguard for a new democracy, believing it essential for an informed citizenry and a check on government power. We talked about their healthy fear of ignorance, and that they had a real concern of that. They believed in freedom of the press to help inform the people, and as well as a check on government power. As articulated by figures like Thomas Jefferson, who said a lot about the freedom of the press, by the way. Jefferson saw it as critical watchdog against official corruption and misuse of power. What have we been talking about this whole time? Corruption of government. Though they were concerned about the potential for biased reporting and the need for truth and democracy, they prioritized protection from government censorship and believed a free press would ultimately foster truth and inform public discourse, a necessity for self-governance. What did we say from the beginning? The whole experiment is self-governance. They believed the freedom of the press was critical for that. In the breakdown, the watchdog function, they believed that the press was seen as an essential watchdog to keep citizens informed about the actions of their government and to expose corruption of misdeeds. Informed citizenry. A free press was crucial for a self-governing society, allowing for the free flow of information and ideas necessary for citizens to participate effectively in government affairs. A check on government. The framers believed a free press would provide a vital check on the power of government, preventing potential abuse by holding officials accountable to the public. We have rights. They have authority. Thomas Jefferson said famously, our liberty depends on freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost. He believed that while the press had an obligation to report accurately, it should be free from government restraint, with citizens ultimately discerning truth from falsehood. James Madison said some stuff. There's some stuff in here about 19th century media. You should really read the rest of it, but we're going to move on. Thomas Jefferson said, reason and free thought are the only effectual agents against error. I guess the best evidence that we have of how critical free speech and freedom of the press were to the framers is that it's the First Amendment. It's the First Amendment in the Constitution, not the Third, not the Seventh. It's the First. What you got?
The Annenberg Classroom, the Annenberg Foundation has got a series of classes that you can take. And the summary from their Freedom of the Press classroom is freedom of speech or the press did not exist in the colonies before the Constitution.
Think about that for a second. How critical that is. That pre this country, pre our Constitution, even the aristocracy was cautious about what they said in public because the king had all the rights and all the authority. Whereas we have rights and they have authority, the king had all the rights and all authority. So he could just torture people and get the response that he wanted. It might not even have been true. Anyway, go ahead.
British subjects were under the authority of the king. And the king punished dissenters. We're well rehearsed here.
Yeah.
The king also controlled the press and censored content before it was published. After the colonists fought and won the independence from England, the rules were changed when the Constitution was written. Remembering the king's actions, the framers designed a government with 3 branches and a system of checks and balances to prevent the abuse of power. They also made the federal government responsible for protecting individual liberties and accountable to a separate but powerful group, the people. Thomas Jefferson viewed the press as the only safeguard for public liberty, with the informed citizenry as its best army for the task. Freedom of the press is seen as vital for protecting democracy, so the framers linked it to speech, included in both the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech or of the press. Experience not only made its mark on the Constitution, but it also affected judicial interpretations that followed. In World War II, the Supreme Court upheld government actions against the people in the interest of national security. Over 200 years, the court would continue to grapple with the freedom of expression and issues in the wartime. All the while, a watchful press would keep the public informed and debate alive. In 1971, the Supreme Court reaffirmed freedom of the press even in the midst of a war by allowing the publication of the Pentagon Papers, and it had come full circle in the views. Now contrast that with something that the Heritage Foundation wrote. What exactly did the framers mean by freedom of speech or the press? Little is definitely known about the subject. The debates in the First Congress, which proposed the Bill of Rights, are brief and unilluminating. Every state constitution generally included similar provisions, but there is no record of detailed debate about what those state provisions meant. The framers cared a good deal about the freedom of the press. You know, if they'd have started out with the framers cared a good deal about freedom of the press, but then go into the rest of it, it would make sense. But instead they framed it kind of in a negative, what are they talking about light? And Jason and I talked about this at lunch. It's like, what did the framers think about it? Why is there no debate? Well, because they thought it was self-evident. They did not need to have a debate about what the hell we want to do with the press, because they had just experienced trying to get rid of monarchy and that the monarch censored and controlled the press.
Remember, we send them to Washington to agree on things, not to fight about things. So if they agreed on a thing, then there would be little debate about it, because why would you waste your time debating something that you agree about? You move on to the things that you disagree with so you can come to a conclusion. It goes without saying that if unalienable rights, for instance, and things that are deemed self-evident, that would be one of those things, I think.
I keep hearing people talking about we need a dictatorial government. We need an authoritarian. We need a blah blah blah, somebody that's going to strongman tell us what to do. Let me remind you about North Korea. First of all, we talked about freedoms. Freedoms. You and I can go out if we've got the money. We can go out, we can buy a Sony, we can buy a Panasonic, we can buy whatever radio we want. LG, etc., etc., etc. Used to be able to buy a Heath kit, but you can't do that anymore. But in North Korea, if one has the money and the electricity to actually operate it, they can buy a TV or a radio. But it's a state-owned brand, and it gets one channel. You've got no choice as to what you are going to listen to.
The Kim Jong-un channel.
So, you want a dictator?
And
you want a dictatorship? Just keep in mind that an unfettered press is tyranny's kryptonite.
Here's what George Washington had to say about that. For if men are to be precluded from offering their sentiments on a matter which may involve the most serious and alarming of consequences, that can invite the consideration of mankind. Reason is of no use to us. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we will be led like sheep to the slaughter. That's what one radio channel gets you. So
the only thing I want to fault the last line I want to say is the unfettered press is tyranny's kryptonite.
It is indeed. And there are many ways. We wanted to start by offering an olive branch like we normally do and talk about how important this is and how critical it is and how critical the framers believed that it was. And many ways. The news has always been presented through a lens, even when it was in print. And the way they put the words together, and then innovations came along, everything from bold type, think wanted posters. Everybody has that image of that big Western bold type, that got you to think a certain thing. This is a bad hombre. How it gets presented. All these innovations, everything from bold type to the radio, think Orson Welles, people jumping out of windows because they thought we were being attacked by aliens.
Designed to elicit an emotion.
These technologies get thrust upon us. We don't really ask for them, though in many ways we enjoy them and we like them. They can be used against us. The television comes along.
If any of you have seen the Dime video that we did, information is one of those.
For sure.
And that's manipulating of the press.
The television comes along and it provides a whole new way, a whole new lens for presentation and for people to receive information in a much more impactful way. And that the television gets us all the way through Ronald Reagan. And here's what Reagan had to say about freedom of the press. There is no more essential ingredient than a free, strong, and independent press to our continued success in what the founding fathers called our noble experiment in self-government. I think Reagan probably meant that. But it was Reagan's administration that introduced the Fairness Doctrine.
No, took it away.
Oh, excuse me, took away the Fairness Doctrine. And
see, I was paying attention.
Yeah. And that changed everything. And next week, we're going to tell you all about it.
Well, you brought this up, and you take a look at through history. whether it's on radio or whether it's on television, the folks that were standing there behind the camera or in front of the microphone were journalists. They were newspaper trained, or they were out there in the field. They were war correspondents. And now we've got opinion hosts that are former press secretaries, or where's their journalistic experience? It's all about eliciting that emotion.
We live in an attention economy.
Yes. What was that song about the bubble-headed bleach blonde?
Oh yeah, Don Henley.
Yeah.
Dirty Laundry.
Dirty Laundry.
From the 80s.
Yeah.
If you made it this far,
thank you.
Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Join the conversation. Share this with young folk. We are trying our best to salvage what we know as our liberties. And that's, probably going to be a long battle. And it's their lives that we're trying to secure. So share it with them. Thanks.
Their future.
Their future, that's right. Thanks. We'll see you next week.